لبيك اللهم لبيك.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Last lesson we began Al-Bab al-Thalith, the third subchapter, and we began speaking about the Mahdhurat al-Ihram in the first mas'ala of this chapter, the prohibitions of al-Ihram. We read up to ᴬᵗ-ᵀᵃൃʰощ. We mentioned 4 of the prohibitions. The 4 prohibitions, the first one was wearing fitted clothing, and this is specific to men. Using perfume on the clothes or on the body, and this is for both men and women. Removing hair or nails, and this is for both men and women. Covering the head, and this was specific for men. This is the prohibitions that we read last lesson. And also for women, they are not allowed to cover their faces or wear gloves. طيب. Number 5. We continue from number 5. عقد النكاح له ولغيره. It's not permissible for a person while in the state of ihram to carry out a marriage contract for themselves or for another person. And likewise, it's not permissible for them to propose, as it comes in the hadith of Uthman radiallahu anhu. In Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا ينكح المحرم. The muhrim does not marry, ولا ينكح, nor is he married off, ولا يخطب, nor does he propose. So it's not permissible for the person in the state of ihram to get married or to be given away in marriage or to propose. This is number 5. Number 6. الوطء في الفرج وهو مفسد للحج قبل التحلل الأول ولو بعد الوقوف بعرفة. الوطء في الفرج. This refers to sexual intercourse. It's not permissible for a person while in the state of ihram to engage in sexual intercourse. This is one of the severest of the prohibitions, because, as the scholars have said, if it takes place before التحلل الأول, it invalidates mufsid lil hajj, it invalidates the hajj. التحلل الأول, when a person performs hajj, when he assumes the state of ihram, there are 2 stages he undergoes before he comes out of the state of ihram. So there's the first stage, التحلل الأول, and there's التحلل الثاني, the second stage. After التحلل الأول, the certain things becomes halal upon you. So you're not fully allowed to engage in the prohibitions, the prohibited matters. They don't all become permissible. Some of them, most of them become permissible except intercourse. There's a different opinion as to what constitutes التحلل الأول. What do you have to do in order for one to enter the stage of التحلل الأول? Wallahu a'lam, most correct it seems is that stoning is the bare minimum. If you have stoned on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, Jamratul Aqaba, then this is the bare minimum for you to enter into the stage of التحلل الأول. But it's better for a person to be cautious and do the rest of the other things which the other scholars have mentioned, like sacrificing and shaving the head or trimming the head. طيب, so once you've entered التحلل الأول, the mahdhurat, they become permissible for you. So you're allowed to cut your nails, you're allowed to shave, you're allowed to use perfume. طيب, everything is permissible except for intercourse. Then once you perform tawaf al-ifada, the final tawaf and sa'i, then you've completed hajj, you've entered into the second stage of التحلل الثاني is called. That's when everything becomes permissible, including sexual intercourse. So what they're saying here is, if a person has intercourse or engages in this prohibition of al-ihram before التحلل الأول, before the first stage, before stoning on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, ولو بعد الوقوف بعرفة, even if he stood at Arafah, but before the first tahallul, which is, according to the correct opinion, by stoning. If a person engages in sexual intercourse, then this is from the prohibitions which invalidates the hajj. It invalidates the hajj. طيب. So this is why this is one of the most severest, if not the most severe, of the prohibitions, intercourse. The 7th one, al-mubasharatu fima dun al-farj. This is fondling aside from sexual intercourse. So mubashara, fondling, is something which is prohibited while in the state of ihram. وَلَا تُفْسِدُ النُّسُكِ. This does not invalidate the Hajj. It does not invalidate the Hajj, fondling. وَكَذَا الْقُبْلَةُ وَاللَّمْسُ وَالنَّظَرُ بِشَهْوَةٍ. Likewise also, something which enters into this is kissing and sexually touching one another and looking at one another with shahwa, with desire. So all of the things which lead to intercourse, the muqaddimat al-jima', this is what number 7 refers to. Kissing, fondling, talking, and anything which arouses and is sexual and leads to intercourse. Even if it's not intercourse, this is also not permissible, as has been mentioned by a group of the scholars, including Ibn Abbas, where he interpreted the saying of Allah, فَمَنْ فَرَضَ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجَّ فَلَا رَفَث. Al-rafath, they said, is al-jima' wa muqaddimat al-jima'. Includes both of these two in that ayah. The eighth prohibition, قَتْلُ صَيْدِ الْبَرِّ وَاصْطِيَادِهِ. It's not permissible for a person to kill any animal which lives on al-barr, on land, any land animal, وَاصْطِيَادِهِ, and hunting it or trapping it. طيب, Shaykh Uthaymin, he mentions regarding this part 3 conditions. He said that the animal that a person is not allowed to hunt while in the state of ihram has to fulfill 3 conditions. Firstly, it has to be a land animal, Sayd al-Barr. If it's one which lives on sea, then it doesn't enter into this. It's not included in this, so it's permissible. And uses as evidence the ayah, أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ صَيْدُ الْبَحْرِ وَطَعَامُهُ مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِلسَّيَّارَةِ وَحُرِّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ صَيْدُ الْبَرِّ مَا دُمْتُمْ حُرُمًا. Allah, He makes permissible for you Sayd al-Bahr, that which lives in the sea, the animals which live in the sea. But He makes haram for you the animal which lives on land while you are in the state of ihram. So the first condition is that the animal has to be one which is a land animal, that lives on land, not one which lives on sea. If it lives in the sea, then it's permissible. The second condition for this type of animal is that it is one which is halal. It's an animal which is halal for a person to eat. If it is halal, then you're not allowed to hunt it. The third one is that this animal is mustawhish طبعا. It's naturally wild. It's a naturally wild animal. These are the 3 conditions. It has to be a land animal that is halal and that is wild. If it fulfills the 3 conditions, then it's haram for you to hunt it. It's haram for you to hunt it. So an example of an animal which lives on land, and it's halal for a person to eat, but it's not wild, is a sheep, a camel, a cow, a chicken. These ones have not fulfilled the condition because it's not wild. So it's permissible for a person to hunt it and kill it and eat it while in the state of ihram. So those are the 3 conditions with this 8. It has to be a land animal that's halal for a person to eat, and it's wild in its nature. ويجوز له قتل الفواسق التي أمر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بقتلها في الحل والحرم للمحرم وغيره. And likewise, what's excluded from this is those types of vermins or pests which the Prophet ﷺ allowed to kill inside and outside of the haram, in the state of ihram or outside of the state of ihram. So there's animals which the Prophet ﷺ has allowed for people to kill them because these animals are harmful. وهي الغراب, and they are as follows: الغراب, the crow; والفأرة, the rat or mouse; والعقرب, the scorpion; والحدأة, which is the kite; والحية, the snake; والكلب العقور, the wild dog. So these animals don't enter into this. Obviously the 3 conditions that we mentioned exclude them anyway, because these are not halal for a person to eat. طيب. ولا يجوز له الإعانة على قتل صيد البر. Likewise, it's not permissible for a person who is in the state of ihram to hunt them, nor is it permissible for him to aid a person who is hunting them, to aid by giving them the weapon, by directing them, or any other sort of assistance. He's not allowed to offer assistance to anyone who is hunting them either. لا بالإشارة, not by pointing or indicating towards them, ولا بغيرها, or other than indication. Any type of assistance. It's not permissible for a person to hunt while in the state of ihram, nor is he allowed to assist another person in hunting them. ولا يجوز أكل ما صيد من أجله. Likewise, if someone goes out and hunts an animal and then he brings it to the muhrim and says, I've hunted this for you, it's not permissible for the muhrim to eat it. وَلَا يَجُوزُ أَكْلُ مَا صِيدَ مِنْ أَجْلِهِ. It's not permissible for him to eat that which has been hunted for his sake. طيب, so 3 things. You're not allowed to hunt those animals which fulfill those 3 conditions. You're not allowed to assist anyone in hunting them, even if you don't partake in that yourself. And if it is hunted for you, then it's not permissible for you to eat it while in the state of ihram. طيب, that's the 8th one. Number 9, لا يجوز للمحرم ولا غيره قطع شجر الحرم أو نباته الرطب غير المؤذي. Number 9 is that it's not permissible for the person who is in the state of ihram, as well as the one who is outside of the state of ihram, so both muhrim and non-muhrim, it's not permissible for them to cut the trees of the haram, the trees that grow in the haram, أو نباته, or any of its plants, الرطب, which are moist and causing no harm. It's not permissible to cut any of the trees or the plants which are still moist, living or growing inside the haram, that are causing no harm. طيب, so this is a prohibition which is not restricted to a person being in the state of ihram. So in the state of ihram, outside the state of ihram. So perhaps he shouldn't have mentioned this, because the title here is محظورات الإحرام, the things which are prohibited because of ihram, بسبب الإحرام. This is not بسبب الإحرام, this is general. For muhrim, غير muhrim, it's not permissible for them to cut the trees down or in the haram. طيب, so perhaps he shouldn't have mentioned this under this chapter. But anyhow, it's important to know that you're not allowed generally to cut any of the trees or plantation that's growing inside the haram. ويجوز قطع الأوصال المؤذية في الطريق. However, it is permissible for a person to cut down those awsal, those limbs from the trees which are causing harm, and because they are on the pathway, it's permissible for them to cut it down. ويستثنى من شجر الحرم الإذخر. Likewise, an exception is made for idkhir, which is a type of plant. It looks something like this. طيب, so the idkhir is something which the Prophet ﷺ excluded. He gave exception to this because of his uncle Al-Abbas. He mentioned when the Prophet ﷺ prohibited cutting down the trees and plantation in the haram, he says إِلَّا الْإِذْخِرِ. He said to him, accept this because we use it. So he said, okay, accept that. وَمَا أَنْبَتَهُ الْآدَمِيُّونَ بِالْإِجْمَاعِ. Likewise, an exception is also made for those plants which are planted by the people. If humans are the ones who have planted these trees, like gardening and so on, a tree that's planted in someone's garden and so on, if after a year they want to cut it down and change it and so on, then it's permissible, because this is not the ashjar al-haram. Shajar al-haram, the nabat al-haram, what this refers to is those things which grow without the intervention of humans. They grow naturally without the intervention of humans. Anything which is grown by the humans themselves, then they can take it down, and that's not included in the prohibition. طيب. So to summarize, we have taken the mahdurat al-ihram, and these mahdurat can be divided into 3. A category which is general for both males and females, a category which is specific for females, and a category which is specific for males. Something important to know. So libsul makhit, for example, the first one, is something which is specific for men. Fitted clothing is a prohibition which is specific for men. Women are allowed to wear fitted clothing. The second one, isti'mal al-tib, using perfumery while in the state of ihram, is something which is general, both males and females. Covering the head is specific to males. Wearing niqab and burqa and wearing gloves. This is, we can't really say it's specific to women, but yes, women are not allowed to do this, wearing niqab, covering their faces with niqab and burqa and wearing gloves. But we can't say it's specific to them, because men are also not allowed, because it enters into makhit. They're not allowed to wear fitted clothing. These are fitted. Gloves are fitted for the hands, and the niqab and burqa are fitted for the face. So we can say it's general for both of them. Aqd al-nikah, contracting marriage for oneself or others, is impermissible for both males and females, and likewise proposing. Intercourse for both males and females, fondling both males and females, hunting both males and females, and the last one, which is general for the state of ihram and outside of the state of ihram, This is for both males and females. You're not allowed to cut the plants and the trees that grow within the haram. Barakallahu feekum. Next lesson we are going to go into the second mas'ala, which is the fidya. Fidya is the compensation. What does a person do if he has committed any of these mahdhurat? Barakallahu feekum. Subhanakallahu bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.